First quarter didn't go so well. I haven't even introduced myself, but I'm Scott Lutostanski. I run all of, we call it academic coaching. I run all of the academic coaching at Galin Education. That's our executive function coaching program. I'll be veering into some of those things today. But what I'd like to say is that the way that we work with students, and maybe you're familiar with it, maybe you're not, is that students come and work with us and they get a coach and they meet weekly throughout a semester or even a full school year. And we are really focused on specific skills that students can build in order to be more successful. So, as I talk today, the things I'm talking about are the things that I've seen in 15 years of doing this work with students. I'm a former therapist, I'm a former special ed teacher. They're the things the research says, but it's really, hey, we're hitting November 1st or 5th. And this is kind of when some students start to struggle, or maybe first quarter didn't go so well. And so, like, we need to regroup here and change some things up. So, I'll be giving a lot of examples of some things we see from students. These are the types of students we see. I'm going to try to be on the quicker side here, so I don't want to go through these in depth. But what we see a lot is I'm going to call it the same old pattern student, right? It's like start the year off pretty hot, start to fade out by early to mid October. And now we're back in all the same old patterns. We got homework pile ups. We got, um, yeah, I don't know, things popping up in Infinite Campus all of a sudden that aren't in. And I think the same old pattern student is pretty similar to the slow slide student, which is as the year goes on, I just kind of slowly taper out as a student. Like things get more difficult, missing assignments pop up, tests and quizzes are kind of popping up that I don't know about that same day. I'm not preparing for them in the way that I need to. Um, and so those are the main students we see. The deceiver, that's kind of honestly, they're all kind of the same, but the deceiver is the kid where it's like, oh no, all those assignments are in, but the teacher hasn't entered them, and I got them to her a little late, and like they just kind of students can slide by pretty far before it's like, wait a second, what's going on here? Um, and sometimes students are struggling in a class or two. Sometimes there's one very specific class, or they're doing pretty well on everything, but then maybe their test scores are coming out low 70s, 60s, C's and D's, and it's like the tests are the main thing. So these are usually the things this time of year what we're seeing. The build it back student is like students that are very dysfunctional, very disconnected from school, having a hard time engaging, having a hard time getting going. Um, and so I'll be referencing that one too, because those students really have to kind of build it back up from the ground level. One of the things we're going to talk about today, though, is the executive functions. I like to use the words process, I'm sorry, the journey and the outcome. And so I use this a lot when I talk about the work we do. I find these days that when it comes to students, like sometimes the outcomes are much, much better than the journey, especially since COVID, schools loosened up. Schools did, I don't know, deadlines, grading, everything got a little more lax. Um, and so a lot of times when students are struggling after first quarter, we really have to dig in on the journey. We have to dig in on like what's happening and what are the things that need to change so that this student can be more effective in school, so they can raise their grades, so they can have less stress, more quality work, whatever it is we're shooting for. Um, the executive functions are a big part of that journey. And so by this point, you probably had time to read the definition on the screen, but they are a set of processes that have to do with managing oneself and one's resources in order to achieve a goal. The umbrella term for the neurologically based skills involving mental control and self regulation. I really like to focus on that second sentence. One of the terms that I may use a few times here as I'm talking um, is the cognitive roadmap. But a lot of times, students need support in learning the cognitive roadmap needed to execute skills. What is the thought process I have to go down in order to complete this? What is the, um, you know, higher level thinking or even just lower level thinking, but like, what is the order of my thoughts I need in order to efficiently pack my backpack and folders and get to school with everything I need and turn it in when I get to school, right? Or pack my lacrosse bag and have everything I need for the game on Thursday, or pack my suitcase for the 3-day trip we're taking out of town. what is the cognitive roadmap and how can that school example apply to other examples in life? But ultimately, um, students to learn these skills often need to learn that cognitive roadmap. A lot of times I like to focus on emotions. I'm going to kind of skip over that part today. This is a list of the executive functions. Um, and a lot of these I like to even cluster. If you Google executive functions, by the way, you'll find no list is the same. This is the list I like to work off. But when I think of what we do, and I will be referencing our work here because I think it makes it a little easier for me to talk about it. I often, and I think a student struggling, I sometimes simplify what we do down to three simple steps. And that is step number one, do you know what you need to do? Step number two, can you plan, manage, and organize what you need to do? And step number three, can you do what you need to do? There is a loud leaf blower behind me. Usually the sound doesn't come through my AirPods, but if it is loud, somebody please let me know. Perfect timing. So those three steps, do I know what I need to do? Can I plan, manage, organize what I need to do? Can I do what I need to do? And so when I look at these steps and I think of the students who are struggling, I kind of try to cluster them into like, okay, number one, can do I know what I need to do? That doesn't really fall into one of these, but that is, am I able to track and manage my Google pages and write things down in class? But then really the planning, managing, and organizing, and then really like doing what I need to do, which I often find is a huge challenge. And I wouldn't be shocked if people on this call are like, my students' problem right now is they can't do things. They can't start their homework. They can't get going on a paper or start to prepare for a test. And so initiation, getting started, and attention, staying up with it, um, are often the huge challenges here as we see students struggling in school. Um, and so the executive functions are super important. I want to get into kind of talking about some of them. But overall, like they predict student success as well as IQ. And we often find with the students who are struggling in school this time of year, it's it for some students, it's content, but for most students, we find it's how do I keep up? How do I manage? How do I execute better? Um, these are the things that we find are most difficult. This isn't even a we thing. Whoops, this is a research thing too, but things that are newer, more complex, and more long term, right? So when students are struggling, school becomes overwhelming, it becomes difficult, emotions flood the system. The newer things feel more new, the more complex things feel more complex, things like that. So as I talk through this presentation, a lot of times the focus of some of these strategies I'm going to go through are okay, if this is what's most difficult, this is what puts the most demand on our brains, this is what requires us to kind of rise to the challenge the most, usually leads to the most avoidance too. Then the goal is the flip of that. We want the work to be more familiar, less complex, and less long term. So something that's complex and long term and new is okay, let's say a student has to write a paper and it's due in 6 weeks and they need 5 citations and need to compare a couple things from two different books. That would be a pretty complex paper for a high school kid. That would be new, and that's 6 weeks is pretty long term. Like that is going to be really difficult. So all of a sudden, with an assignment like that, the thought process is, well, what are the strategies a student needs to learn and start to use in order to make that much easier, in order to be able to get started better, in order to not have so much stress or anxiety and things like that. That's kind of like the well, that is the philosophy here. And if there's anything to take out of this, it's like just leave here thinking, how can I help my student make things more familiar, less complex, less long term? That's really the goal. Okay, so I'm going to go through a couple skills. These are just common things that we see for students break down this time of year and where they really struggle. I will point out before I go through these, one of those students that I had on that first slide of like, who are we seeing struggle is like sometimes it's the student who's really struggling in one thing, one subject or two subjects. Um, I'm going to talk about skills here, but sometimes with those, it's a little more straightforward. Like, well, you need a tutor, and get a pre-calc tutor and start hitting it hard with that tutor because that class is really difficult for you. I even think sometimes getting a tutor can be more effective than saying, "Hey, go to the school library," because they have like seniors there that help you. Just because. Um, Students sometimes buy in more, even just when it's like, hey, I have a tutor outside of school. This is totally different, and I take it way more seriously, or I value their opinion more, or whatever. I mean, I've also seen it work with a senior in high school pretty well too. So, but I do think when it comes to like getting help in one specific subject, it's just about finding the right fit. Um, all right, organization, right? This is one of our steps. It's like, how can students be organized and how can they be more on top of their work? Organization, certainly not glamorous. Um, and actually kind of basic, but I find the challenge is, especially, putting myself in the parent role, is it's difficult to approach. It's hard to get a kid to buy in. Um, and then ultimately, like, we're working towards consistency, and that can be hard. I often encourage parents to kind of group, hey, we're gonna do group the concept with something else. So more so like the time of year where it's like, hey, quarter one's open or quarter one's over. It didn't go well. Like, let's dig in together and put together an organizational system for quarter two. It's kind of easy to like try something like this around a bigger milestone, I think, than jumping in on like a random Thursday and just being like, hey, let's do organization together. Either way, the nuts and bolts of it is, let's do these three things. What's the system? I like to just call it the hierarchy of organization, but it truly is just going from the top level all the way down. If it's a Google Drive and you can think how um, file folders are organized. It's like, okay, this is my freshman year, this is my first semester, and then here's my classes: English, history, math, um, Spanish, whatever. And then really just within that, it's like I have my next level of folders in the hierarchy. Okay, in English, I have to write that Great Gatsby paper and I have to do that Crucible project and all these things. Like, it is the most common sense way to organize, but students don't have that concept, especially electronically, which is where a lot of organization happens. On the other side of it, it's the physical organization where it's like, hey, you should never lose papers. You should never not be able to turn something in. You need to know where everything is at all times, and you need to be just honestly throwing things out on a periodic basis. So, um, how's that hierarchy look physically? Backpack, maybe a binder, maybe a folder. Left pocket of the folder is for things going back and forth. Right pocket of the folder is for things that stay at school. It's funny, I've used that system for 15 years, and now my kindergarten came home from school, and that's how his folder was labeled. And I was like, great, but it's true. I think the more challenging thing is the cognitive roadmap. Like, I need to burn this into my brain. And the Rush Neurobehavioral Center at Chicago does a lot of research in this topic, and they have a system called the one touch system. And it's what I encourage with students. Not so much the action, although the action is math teacher hands homework out, the second it touches my hands, it goes into the right place. It's one touch. I touch it one time and it ends up in the right place. But I also want the cognitive roadmap piece of that, which is like to be able to know where it goes. Students need to be able to run down the hierarchy and say, okay, this goes in my backpack, this goes in my binder, this goes in my math folder, this goes in the left pocket. And they just need to be able to practice that and practice it. And it's the same with sports, it's the same with travel, it's the same with all those. So at the end of the day, all of these things I'm talking about that can help students kind of improve their skills, um, they kind of go with this number two moment, having a moment each week to check in. When we work with students, they obviously have a moment because they see their coach once a week, and that is their moment where we can check in on a lot of these systems and make sure you know all your deadlines, you're managing your work, you know how to get started, and all the things I'm talking about today. Um, but students don't need to work with us to be able to do this. In fact, I often always give it as after students stop working with us, I always give it as the recommendation of like, well, just keep doing your Sunday time or your Monday night time where you would normally meet with a coach and do all the same stuff. Like, you go through it, um, and make sure you got it all. Um, and so I'm going to talk about time management now, but I think organization, time management, it kind of all falls in the same bucket where I often encourage families like, hey, you can't just throw this on your kid. Like, you need to obviously put thought into how to pull this off. And a lot of times the move that students can stomach is just like, hey, we're all doing this together. I'm about to talk about Google Calendar and how students need to manage their time and deadlines. But a lot of times that right intervention is, hey, we're all sitting down, all four, five, three, however many are in your family. We're all sitting down and we're all doing our calendars at the same time at the same table and talking through schedules. Or I'm going to organize my work bag. You take a minute to organize your backpack, or I'm going to organize my work folders. You organize yours on your computer, and we're going to do this together. Obviously, everyone here on this call like kind of has to take into account what they can get away with their own kid and in their own house before they start like an all-out brawl with their kid. But that's what I've seen be the easiest to stomach for students, and takes the spotlight off of them and kind of makes it a family thing. So I think that's the best way to do organization, to do time management, is all together on a Sunday night or something. These are the goals of time management. Is okay. I'm going to flip back and forth, but like, how am I managing my time and tracking long-term work? Students need a visual. We don't reinvent the wheel. We encourage basically all the students we work with to use Google Calendar. Most do. But they need to see this visual and they need it open and checking it every day. I'm always shocked, even still to this day, that like high school students don't know, oh, Monday night, my home game is a home game. And Thursday night, my game's in Beloit, and that's an hour away. And they just like never know who they're playing, where it's at, what's going on. And those are important things when you're figuring out, well, how do I study for a test? And when am I going to fit this in? And what are the deadlines I have? And what's the work I have to do? Um, so step one is we want them to create this visual and then use it every single day. Um, but ultimately, when it comes to their work, like we want students to be able to have two lists. Number one is a master list. Like, what is all the work that you have to do on a daily basis? Most of the students we work with like to use Google Keep for this. Some just have a little note, like a custom notebook planner they buy. Um, but that is like, what's everything in the next 10 to 14 days? Like, I need to know what I got on my plate. I need to know what's coming up. Um, as well as like big dates too. And you can see I even put some bigger dates here in my visual. An English paper, a quiz. In my mind, bigger dates are test papers, projects, quizzes sometimes, um, presentations. Um, but ultimately, like students need to get comfortable with, here's my system, here's my master list, everything I have going on for 10 to 14 days out. And then ultimately, we want them each day to do a to-do list, which is like, today's Wednesday, what do I have to get done today? Tomorrow's Thursday, what do I have to get done on Thursday? Um, and so they can work off their master list to then really take a look and say, okay, what fits here? Oh, yeah, I have orchestra practice on Monday and my quiz is on Wednesday. You know what? That's a quiz. I'll be able to get away with it studying um, on Tuesday. Google Keep. Someone just asked, "What's Google Keep?" Good question. It's just kind of like a post-it note app in Google. It's very similar to Google Tasks. Um, as a matter of fact, if you guys will bear with me, um, I can show you. Of course, I just got auto logged out, so nothing can be convenient here. But I can show you. I work with a lot of college students, um, so I can show you if I have a college student. Um, he's of course on fall break, but if he has his schedule and he's tracking his big assignments, Google Keep is over here. Um, And so you can list out, this is a college student, so he's listing it out by class. But Google Keep is just like a to-do list for how to keep track of different things. So I can look at different students' lists because I have them, and some of these are old, like this one. But I can see sort of everything that's going on their master list. So then they can actually translate that into um, what do I have to do today? Like, what do I have to do on a Tuesday? And now I have to try to get back on track here. But it's just an easy way to do it. I find that planners, what I have found with students over the last 15 years is planners have kind of started to fade away. I'm still a big fan of fanners in the sense that I want students to write down their to-do list for the day. And that's usually where I encourage them to write it in their planner. But most kids don't use a planner because they're like, I have a post-it sticky note on my desktop on my computer, or I use the notes app in my phone, or I use a Google Keep or something like that. It's really nice when they have something they can do electronically because it goes everywhere with them. Planners, I just find are so hard for students to maintain and keep. Um, that sometimes it's not worth the trouble. But again, it's all about that cognitive roadmap. It's like, how do I always create my list, be updating my list, be checking I have to be checking my class sites. I have to be writing things down in class to be able, there's a lot that goes into what is my master list. And then, okay, now it's Wednesday. You know what? Tuesday night, I'm going to sit down and think through what I have to do on Wednesday. Here's the things. For high school, of course, like sometimes your list gets built as you're going through the day and you get homework assignments. Some kids are at block schools, they can plan a day out, block schedule schools. But that's the cognitive roadmap students need is like, I'm always doing my time management. I'm putting my big long-term things onto the calendar. I'm managing my master list. I'm thinking through what I have to do each day. That right there is a really good thought process. And when students do that for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, it usually sticks and that kind of stays with them. Ultimately, one of the goals is, well, how do I write a really good paper? Like that is the goal. How do I manage my time and piece it together throughout the week, get help where I need to get help, um, and go through the steps to write a really good paper? That's really what we're going for. Um, and so when we work with students, obviously we set a lot of goals. There's a lot of accountability. We like to text and check in with them as we are working towards consistency. I think it's all about making this part of the daily and weekly routine. I think the goals and accountability piece is a little harder from the parent side. We have that a little easier. Um, because we're not the student's parent. And honestly, it's even easier for us than teachers. Um, but thinking through, well, how do I make this again less complex, less long term? It's like, okay, I'm doing these strategies to stay on top of my work because usually I don't know if everyone here is about to nod their head, but usually missing assignments and not being able to keep up with work is one of the challenges when students first quarter or they're, where they're at this point in the year isn't going that well. Okay, two more things that I wanted to focus on. One is task analysis. This is a smaller skill, but we truly see this be the thing that um, freezes students up and makes them avoid work, which is understanding assignment, breaking it down, having timelines, having accountability. Um, this is um, this is the thing that prevents students from getting a lot of work done. I had a student in my office this week who had been putting off the city design project. Um, and then the longer students kind of don't work on something, the bigger it builds in their mind, the more it weighs on them to the point where they just can't even stomach to maybe even open the assignment page and read it. Um, and then we read it, we broke it down, we made clear steps. And of course, he was like, oh, that's not that bad. Um, and then started doing the work, which by the way definitely going to take some time, but it wasn't bad. It was like actually he thought it was a fun assignment. Um, and so I find that this is a really crucial skill. And it ties into exactly, I like to kind of just give this its own quick little spotlight because it ties into this, which this is usually one of the biggest things. And that's why I save it for the end is like, this is one of the biggest things for why students are struggling. They aren't able to initiate. When I work with students, um, this skill, it's hard because it's hard to teach someone to do. And I describe it, and also motivation too. I hear my kid's not motivated. Oftentimes I put a twist on that of, well, most kids actually are motivated to do well and want to do well. They're not like trying to mess up in school. And so then the challenge is, well, what skill needs to get better? And usually it's two. It's the skill of initiation and it's the skill of staying on task. Um, so the way that I describe it is like there's always that moment. There will always be that moment when a student needs to get started. It is that singular moment where it's like I'm putting pen to paper or whatever they have to do. My fingers on the keyboard. Um, that has to happen. Now, as coaches, we can't just be like, do it, because it probably won't happen. Our goal is how do we increase the likelihood the percent likelihood that that student is able to get started when they want to. And that's how I describe it to parents. And that's how I describe it to students is like, what we want to do is raise the percent likelihood that you get started when you want. And we have students that come to us that are at pretty close to zero sometimes. 5% of the time, they're able to actually do work when they want to. 19 out of 20 times, they're not. It can be really debilitating. It can lead to big time struggles in school. It can lead to worse mental health issues than just school problems. Like it can really build. And so if we go through and we think, how do we raise the percent likelihood the student is able to get started? I call it the initiation infrastructure, but it's like, what are all the environmental inputs that we can control around that singular moment of getting started? Um, so ideal environment is a term I use sometimes, but like, how do I build the right environment? Where do I need to be? What's my visual field? What's my audio situation going on? Am I listening to noise canceling headphones? I've had students that brought all sorts of strange things they like to listen to get work done, but it helps. They're usually right about what they need to listen to. Who needs to be around me? Um, what are these spaces I'm working in? We usually encourage students to have a couple places that are literally work only spaces that they don't really go in at other times. It's easy on a college campus. In high school, it takes a little more work, but students can usually find a place in town or um, certainly in their house. Um, and then like, what are the strategies involved? Now, usually one of the giant pieces to the infrastructure here of getting started is the phone and the computer, but really the phone I think is the biggest one. And it actually is a quite simple answer that you don't need to listen to me talk about, but the easiest thing to do is put your phone in another room. Or if we work with college kids, we say put your phone on in your backpack and put your backpack on the ground. That really is the answer. It is so much harder to do than just to say. Um, like right now I'm doing this. Of course, I didn't want my phone on me because I put it somewhere, but it's in a drawer or something. But like that is crucial. That is the first step. Is like the phone needs to go away because when students are struggling, it is just too easy and too quick of a distraction and limitless. Used to be if you got distracted, it's like, oh, I got distracted. I read three articles in Sports Illustrated and then I got bored and went back to doing my schoolwork because I didn't literally have the internet in my hand. Um, that's the big first step. I mean, for students to get work done, that's it. But then when you start to incorporate other strategies, right? I mean, one of the most frequent strategies for initiation and staying on task that I've seen is the Pomodoro technique, which is like time on, time off, time on, time off, 15 on, 5 off, 15 on, 5 off. I've seen it work. I've seen it not work way more than I've seen it work. Um, because oftentimes with students who are struggling with initiation, I mean, what I'm about to say, I think is kind of obvious, but it forces them to initiate more, like because they keep stopping and initiating and stopping and initiating. And so, in my experience, I've actually seen students be more successful and get more done when they just get started and write it out as long as they can. Um, and so, I have found right here time blocking be really helpful for initiating and staying on task. Now, time blocking is literally planning out by the minute, or really 5 or 10 minute increments. Um, Not literally by the minute, but 5 or 10 minute increments. So a student might say, okay, from 7 to 7:05, I'm doing this. From 7:05 to 7:10, I'm doing this. From 7:10 to 7:15, I'm doing this. And the key is to be very, very specific. So if they're reading To Kill a Mockingbird, it's not to say read To Kill a Mockingbird, which is, by the way, what most kids will write like in their planners or whatever. They'll read the book. No, it'd be like, oh, I'm looking at it and it's like, yeah, in those 5 minutes, I should read from like page 75 to page 80. And then the next 5 minutes, I'll read 80 to 85. And it's being very specific with math. It's not like, oh, math homework. No, it's like, all right, those first 10 minutes, I'm going to do problems 1 to 12 even. And then the second 10 minutes, I'm going to do 14 to 18 even, and really thinking through like, what are these amounts? Because what it does is it creates a starting point, creates a stopping point, um, creates these like organic goals to be working towards. And what the organic goals have is feedback. It's like, oh, it's 7:10. I'm right on track. It feels good. Hey, I normally don't do work. I just did 10 minutes really good and I'm right on track and I got it done. That feels good. Um and so it kind of has this it's a very simple concept. I mean, students literally can just take out a piece of paper and draw lines and write times on it. I work with a lot of students on this over and over and over. You can build in breaks if you want. Hey, I did 30 minutes of work. Now I'm going to take a 10-minute break and then I'm going to get going again. I just find it's way more effective than the Pomodoro technique, and I've seen it have the most success. There are apps students can use. Forest is an app that does it for them. They still have to, it does the timing piece at least. They still have to do the time blocking on their own. Ultimately, when students are really, really struggling, and I'm talking have a hard time with homework, um, maybe they have 20, 30 missing assignments, like school is really hard in that moment, um, then they're gonna be functioning at a level where they need other people. And oftentimes I do tell parents, body doubling's good if they have a friend or somebody they can work with, sure. Usually that's not the case. Um, but if there's anything to focus on outside of like, hey, do you know what your homework is tonight? It's usually, let me sit with you for 5 minutes so you get started, but then you're on your own. And I've found parents be somewhat successful with that because it's so short term and temporary. It's not like this is indefinite and I'm sitting with you, but it's like, hey, let's do this for 5 minutes. And then I'm gonna go on with my day and hopefully you just keep working. But students need to continually practice getting started. And when they're at a point where they need help with that, then they need help with that. Like there are students who really struggle with initiation and the way, if you're in a sport and you're struggling with something, you get help in real time. That's what it is. It's help in real time. It's just some students struggle with getting started. Can just be the massive, massive hurdle in front of them. Um, so, um, I always want to, with this time of year, it's always like, look, there's usually not massive changes to make, but there's usually like small things that we can incorporate that are just going to create these small changes and start moving this process in the right direction. It does take time. Like, you know, I wish I could talk to everyone here like individually and hear a bit more about their kid and kind of give like super targeted advice. Um, but it just, all these skills, like it takes time to build it up. And then the goal, of course, and what I've seen happen over and over is like school gets easier and easier. Um, so, I use words like template and steps and framework and cognitive roadmap, but that is what it's all about is like I need to just start kind of building a new norm and building up my endurance and building up my initiation muscle or building up my time management muscle so that these things just become pretty regular for me and school's less stressful and I don't avoid it as much and I'm getting my work done on time and all the things that go with that. Um, so hopefully, I looks like I've gone 5 minutes over. Hopefully I always hope everyone gets something out of this, one thing at least. So, hopefully something I said was on target for you and your student and hope what you were hoping to get out of today. But I appreciate you guys spending the time with me and being on the call. I'll leave it open I'll hang out.